Blood trickled down Andre Mitchell's service jacket as he stared into the muzzle of Officer Tyler Blackstone's pistol. The slurs still echoed in his head like shrapnel. Then the sky throbbed with rotor thunder as military helicopters swept in. His secure phone had broadcast an SOS. The reckoning had begun. Before we continue this jaw-dropping saga of injustice and accountability, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Smash that like button and subscribe if you want more true stories where justice crashes down on abusive authorities. The second those helicopters cut across the sun, everything shifted. But how did we get here? Andre exhaled slowly as he rolled past the Welcome to West Ridge, Virginia sign, a surge of complicated feelings tightening his chest. 17 years had passed since he'd fled the town's stifling cocktail of overt and quiet racism for the disciplined clarity of military life. Now a decorated Black Army major with multiple Afghanistan deployments behind him, Andre had come back reluctantly. He was older, wiser, and harder. But this homecoming wasn't for him. It was for the woman who raised him. His grip clenched around the wheel as landmarks he'd tried to forget flickered past. The memories hit like cold rain. Grandma Estelle's voice, weak but stubborn, had finally pulled him home. Her health had slipped, and as her only living relative, Andre couldn't stay away. The modest house, battered by time, sagging porch boards and peeling paint, came into view. He parked the rental, straightened the civilian clothes that felt wrong after so many years in uniform, and drew a steadying breath. Jeans, button-up, low profile. He'd opted not to advertise his rank in this mostly white suburb where invisibility once kept him safe. Stepping onto the cracked walk, memories surged up, uninvited and merciless. The neighbor, Mr. Patterson, calling the cops because 12-year-old Andre was lurking while walking home. The guidance counselor steering him toward trades despite his spotless GPA while pushing college prep for white classmates. The officer who stopped him for matching a description at 16. Those scars had propelled him toward the army, chasing merit over prejudice. The military became his real home. Excellence spoke louder than bias. Andre rose fast, ultimately becoming one of the youngest Black officers to command an elite tactical unit trained for high-risk missions. Rows of ribbons rode his chest, a Purple Heart, a Silver Star for a Kandahar operation that saved 39 civilians. He mastered advanced comms that impressed Pentagon brass. Grandma Estelle's hug was fierce, her frame thin but unbroken. "My boy," she whispered, eyes scanning the man he'd become. A major now. The living room walls were a tribute, photos, clippings, plaques, proof he'd escaped and thrived. For 3 days he settled into the rhythm, cooking, prescriptions, stories, small repairs, and quiet laughter that softened old hurts. On day 4, refills and groceries were due. "Take my car," she insisted, pressing the keys to her weathered Buick into his palm. "Save your rental." He inspected the tired sedan, balding tires, a quirky idle, a hairline crack in a taillight, making a mental list for tomorrow. The car coughed awake, and he rolled toward the pharmacy carefully. Andre drove the 5 miles alert, as always. Years of deployment had sharpened his situational awareness into a habit he couldn't turn off. He clocked each cruiser he passed without moving his head. In his jacket pocket rode his unit's prototype phone, military-grade encryption, biometric sensors, a silent distress protocol that could ship audio, video, and coordinates instantly. He parked by the pharmacy, unaware a taillight had already flagged him. Officer Tyler Blackstone had trailed him for a mile, ran the plate, and noted the elderly Black female owner. Watching from his cruiser, Blackstone formed a conclusion before facts. He decided this was suspicious. He waited until Andre reappeared with a small pharmacy bag. As Andre stepped into daylight, a cruiser slid behind the Buick, lights flashing. Blackstone climbed out, hand draped over his holster in that practiced, performative way that's more threat than protocol. Andre recognized the posture instantly, posture for dominance, not dialogue. He set the paper bag on the hood and prepared for a familiar, dangerous dance. Blackstone approached with swagger, chin lifted. The body language said he wanted surrender, not respect. Andre kept his voice even, a decade of command tempering every syllable. Good afternoon, officer. What seems to be the issue? A dismissive smirk answered him. Tail light. License and registration. Now the hostility wasn't hidden. It never was here. I'm reaching for my wallet. Back pocket, Andre announced, telegraphing every motion. He produced his license and military ID. Major Andre Mitchell, United States Army. I'm visiting my grandmother. It's her car, Blackstone barely glanced, snorting. Right, and I'm the Secretary of Defense. Andre's pulse quickened, his face composed. He'd met this contempt before. It wasn't Blackstone's first time. 3 months ago, he'd stopped Daniel Harris, a black high school teacher, claiming excessive noise, though the windows were up. 6 months before, he detained Nina Brooks, a black nurse, because she looked out of place while jogging. Last year, he pulled a weapon on Jordan Price, 17, falsely accusing him of shoplifting. Complaints vanished like smoke. Police Chief Martin Ellison always intervened, filing allegations under bureaucracy until they died. Ellison and Blackstone were family, brothers-in-law tied by marriage and convenience. Step out, Blackstone barked. Sir, I've provided identification, Andre said calmly. The registration's in the glove box. My grandmother is Estelle Mitchell. Stolen vehicle, Blackstone snapped. Out. Now Andre knew arguing only added kindling. He unbuckled deliberately, hands visible. Reaching for the glove box? He asked him. Blackstone's jaw worked. Hands where I can see them. He sneered at the ID again. No way. Someone like you is an officer. The insult wasn't subtle. Cold dread pooled in Andre's gut. He'd outrun this town. It had chased him anyway. Andre spotted black tape over Blackstone's dashcam indicator. Is your camera functioning, officer? He asked, knowing it would grate. Mind your business, Blackstone said. Hands on the car. What Blackstone missed, the prototype phone had quietly spun up. Stress detection AI triggering passive capture. Audio, video, biometrics, location. The device listened, watched, and waited. Andre complied, hands on the roof, feet apart, body squared. Blackstone patted him down aggressively, lingering where humiliation stings most. What's this? He demanded, pulling the government phone. Military property, Andre said. Blackstone tossed it onto the hood. Sure it is. Cold cuffs bit into Andre's wrists. You're detained for grand theft auto and impersonating an officer. Silence was sometimes the only armor. Andre wore it now. Across the street, a 73-year-old white woman peered from a porch, phone raised, recording. Blackstone's taunts sharpened, more openly racial as he shoved Andre against metal. You people always think you're above the law. Andre's head clipped the roof. Please call my commanding officer, he said carefully. Shut it, Blackstone growled. Stolen car. Fake rank. Impersonations federal. He keyed his radio with theatrical urgency. Dispatch, I've got a combative suspect, possible GTA, claiming military status, likely bogus. Need backup at the West Ridge Pharmacy. The narrative he crafted didn't match reality. It rarely does when power writes the first draft. Officer Nate Delgado heard the call and tightened his grip on the wheel. Young, smart, and tired of swallowing unease, he'd watched too many of Blackstone's stop sour, especially with black residents. He rolled toward the scene, gut heavy. Meanwhile, the prototype phone escalated its protocol, pushing encrypted packets up the chain to a secure operations center. At the Pentagon, a dormant monitor woke, an alert strobing red. Colonel Stephen Hart strode in, summoned by the priority feed. Status, he snapped. A communications lieutenant answered. Sir, distress from Major Mitchell's device. Local stop in West Ridge, Virginia. He's cuffed, possibly injured. Transmission includes live audio, video, coordinates, and vitals. Heart rate elevated, Hart's expression hardened. Delgado arrived to find control already abused. Blackstone was amped. the suspect restrained, the scene apparently hot only by manufactured urgency. "What's going on?" Delgado asked. "Guy's trying to con us," Blackstone said, jerking his chin toward Andre. "Says he's Army brass. Probably stole the uniform in the back. Has he been Mirandized?" Delgado asked. "Terry, stop," Blackstone snapped. "Don't coach me." Andre addressed Delgado with steady clarity. "Officer, I'm Major Andre Mitchell, U.S. Army. That's my grandmother's car. Officer Blackstone searched it without consent and is mishandling government property." Delgado's concern showed. "We should verify his—" "I'm handling it," Blackstone cut in. "Keep quiet unless spoken to," he snarled at Andre. The neighbor's recording drew another resident, and then another. Phones multiplied, shoulders squared. Blackstone barked, "Back inside! Police business," which only seeded more curiosity. In the Pentagon ops room, Hart watched the live feed, jaw tight. "Confirm identity," he ordered. "Patch me to General Vanessa Wallace." The situation at a suburban strip mall had just jumped chains of command. On the asphalt, momentum shifted from irritation to something uglier. Blackstone grabbed Andre hard. "In the cruiser." Andre moved as ordered, calm despite the cuffs. As he pivoted, Blackstone shoved him into the door. Bound hands couldn't break the fall. "He's resisting!" Blackstone yelled for the microphones. The gun cleared holster in one fluid motion. "He's cuffed, Tyler. Stand down," Delgado said, stepping forward. Too late. Whether panic or malice, the shot cracked the air. The round slammed Andre's right shoulder, driving him to his knees. "Officer involved shooting," Blackstone barked into the radio, assembling his script on autopilot. "Suspect turned on me aggressively." The crowd recoiled, then erupted in outrage. Delgado knelt, hands bright with Andre's blood. "We need an ambulance, now!" "Why'd you shoot?" a witness shouted. Phones tracked every breath. Blackstone leveled his weapon toward the gathering civilians. "Back up. This is a police matter." In the Pentagon, the feed jolted as Andre fell, audio capturing the gunshot, the chaos, Delgado's urgent calls, and Blackstone's brittle theatrics. Hart was already on with Wallace. "General, active duty major shot by local police during an illegal detention. We have full stack evidence. Live video, audio, biometrics, coordinates. Wallace's voice went iron. Spin up the QRF, full jurisdictional package. I'm wheels up." On the pavement, Blackstone hovered over Andre, still not rendering aid. "Should have complied," he muttered. The final thing Andre heard before the world thinned was the faraway thump of rotor blades. "Do you think Blackstone was justified?" "I want to hear you. Comment 1 for obvious police brutality or 2 if you believe there's more we haven't seen. If this has you fired up for accountability, tap like and subscribe, because what's coming will stun you. Sirens weren't the loudest sound in the Pentagon's command suite. Alarms were. The prototype phone streamed the entire incident in real time, including Andre's vitals sliding the wrong direction. Lieutenant Yaz Rodriguez narrated quickly. "Priority Alpha distress. West Ridge coordinates. Significant blood loss. Heart rate decelerating." Hart's eyes narrowed. He recognized the name and the stakes. Hart and Andre had served in Afghanistan years earlier. Trust forged under fire doesn't fade. "Get General Wallace," Hart ordered. Within a minute, her face filled the main screen, fury sheathed in professionalism. "I'm seeing the feed," she said. "Major Mitchell is one of ours. He just completed a classified exfil 3 weeks ago. We treat this as hostile. Initiate Aegis Shield," Wallace said, a rarely used framework protecting service members against civilian overreach. "I want a quick reaction force with JAG Corps Council MPs and a trauma team. Prepare federal warrants and a jurisdiction package. Within minutes, the roster gelled. Major Diane Lynn, razor-sharp JAG. Captain Aaron Lewis, battle-seasoned medic. Sergeant First Class Ortiz, MP lead." The team sprinted to the helipad where twin Blackhawks spun up. 3 minutes to wheels up," Wallace called, strapping in. Major Lynn briefed everyone mid-rotor roar. Authority under Title 10 and UCMJ, Article 7, Section 807, will assert custody of Major Mitchell and preserve evidence. Digital orders cover body cameras, dash cams, dispatch logs, and surveillance within defined radius. On the street, Blackstone stood over the bleeding Major, building his narrative. Dispatch suspect became aggressive. I discharged my weapon in self-defense. Scene secured. At the station, Chief Ellison, Blackstone's brother-in-law, took charge instantly. All units, stand down. Officer involved shooting. My supervision only. Media blackout in effect. He dialed favored contacts at the DA's office. Ellison knew the choreography. Control the first version, and you control the belief. He drafted the familiar statement, feared for his life, threatening movement, split-second decision. He hadn't accounted for Mrs. Eileen Patterson across the street. Her video captioned, "Handcuffed black man shot after stating he's military," was already online and accelerating. Delgado ignored Blackstone's glare and applied pressure to the wound, blood soaking his cuffs. "We need paramedics," he repeated into the radio. Andre drifted in and out, the edges of the world fraying. He heard the argument through the hum of pain. "He resisted," Blackstone hissed. "That's not what happened," Delgado answered. "There are witnesses. This won't vanish in the Pentagon." Rodriguez tracked the medevac math. QRF-ETA 11 minutes. County Ambulance ETA 8, heart nodded. "Keep recording." Tag every frame, evidence was stacking. The prototype's feed, biometrics showing calm before the shot, multiple civilian videos. Wallace reviewed a dossier on Blackstone, complaints, excessive force, profiling, each resolved without discipline by Ellison's intervention. Wallace's face stayed neutral, but anyone who knew her recognized the contained rage. As a black woman who'd muscled through the senior ranks, she had no patience for power abused against the people sworn to be protected. "Make sure our warrants cover Ellison," she told Lynn quietly. "This smells like a conspiracy to violate rights." Lynn nodded, already drafting addenda. The thumping helicopters appeared on West Ridge's horizon, sound slicing the tension. Chief Ellison arrived at the scene, pulling Blackstone aside. "Stick to the script. Resisting arrest, threatening move, fear for your safety," he said low. The ground trembled as the Blackhawks descended directly onto the blocked street. Dust lifted, heads tilted back in stunned disbelief. Tactical teams poured out, movements crisp, perimeter locked in seconds. General Vanessa Wallace stepped from the lead helicopter, 4 stars catching the sun. At 59, she wore authority, like armor. Major Lynn followed, briefcase in hand, the law contained in neat packets. The medical team arrowed to Andre, shouldering past Blackstone without a glance. "Gunshot wound, right shoulder," Captain Lewis called. "Significant blood loss, probable clavicle fracture." Pulse thready, but present his team worked fast. Pressure, fluids, oxygen, analgesia. Delgado stood back, breathing hard, hands stained. Wallace moved toward Ellison. "General Wallace, U.S. Special Operations Command," she said. "We're asserting jurisdiction now." Ellison puffed up reflexively. "This is a local matter involving a—" he began. Major Lynn opened the briefcase. "Federal warrants authorize immediate custody of Major Andre Mitchell, an active duty officer unlawfully detained and shot while restrained. We're preserving all evidence, Officer Blackstone's weapon, body cam, dash cam, dispatch traffic, and any departmental communications." The seals and signatures drained Ellison's color. "This is unprecedented," he said weakly. Wallace's gaze cut him off. "Not only can we, Chief Ellison, we must, when one of our officers' rights are violated and a federal crime may have been committed." She faced Blackstone. "Officer Tyler Blackstone, you are detained under federal authority for the shooting of Major Mitchell. Surrender your weapon and badge." To the MPS defiance flickered. "Absurd," Blackstone said. "He resisted. Threatened me. I followed policy." Wallace's tone sharpened. "We have the complete audio and video from Major Mitchell's device. Every word, every action lived to Pentagon command." She gestured at the phone still on the hood, forgotten evidence in plain sight. Color drained from Blackstone's cheeks. Delgado swallowed and stepped forward. "General, I witnessed it." Major Mitchell complied throughout. He posed no threat. When Officer Blackstone fired, Ellison shot him a poisonous look. Delgado didn't back down. From the sidewalk, Mrs. Patterson edged forward, voice steady despite her years. "I filmed it all," she said. "He bullied people here for years. Today went too far. The dam broke. He stopped my son 3 times in a month for looking suspicious," a man said. "We've lived here 2 decades. He threatened to arrest me when I questioned a search," someone else added. Ellison tried to push the crowd back. "Active crime scene," he barked. No one moved. The balance of fear and power had shifted, and everyone knew it. MPs relieved Blackstone of his weapon. "You can't do this," he protested, voice thin. Wallace didn't flinch. "You discharged your weapon at a restrained, compliant military officer. That's assault on military personnel, a federal offense. You'll be detained while we investigate fully." The medical team lifted Andre, stabilized but pale, onto a litter for transport. Andre's eyes fluttered open as they carried him past Wallace. Recognition sparked through the pain. "General," he rasped. Wallace bent close. "We've got you, Major." Rest as the rotors wound up again. Wallace turned to Ellison. "We'll be reviewing your department. Pattern analysis. 10 years. Complaints, stops, detentions, force reports." Ellison blanched further. "You can't take over my department," he said, a last flare of bluster. Wallace's reply was measured steel. "When systemic violations emerge, particularly involving federal personnel, we don't just come in, we are obligated to. Cooperate fully. Obstruction will compound your exposure." Phones captured everything. Blackstone escorted to a military vehicle. Ellison looking suddenly, irrevocably, small. "Every complaint against Blackstone," Wallace told Lynn, "every traffic stop, every use of force, 10 years, and widen the net if the pattern holds." "Already initiated," Lynn said, stylus moving. "Prelim in 24 hours. Helicopters lifted, one bearing Andre and the trauma team, the other carrying a handcuffed officer who had just learned he wasn't above the law. The military hospital corridors hummed as Andre drifted between darkness and fluorescent blur. The surgical team worked for 4 hours to reassemble bone and control bleeding. The bullet had shattered his clavicle, lodging near the shoulder blade. Dr. Captain Elena Alvarez stepped out afterward, briefing Wallace, who hadn't left. "He'll recover fully." 2 inches lower, different story. "When can I speak with him?" Wallace asked. "He'll be sedated at least 12 hours. Significant trauma, significant loss," Alvarez said. Inside recovery, Andre's mind wandered. He saw his father, Staff Sergeant Leonard Mitchell, in dress blues, explaining why they had to be twice as good and twice as careful. The uniform earned respect, he'd said, but didn't guarantee it. Leonard had been passed over for promotion despite impeccable performance. "The uniform doesn't shield us from everything," he had told 10-year-old Andre, "but it gives us a fighting chance." 3 years later, Leonard died in a training accident. Andre and his mother grieved, then pushed forward. When cancer took her senior year, Grandma Estelle caught him before he fell. The Army became his refuge and his proving ground. Discipline, excellence, purpose. He climbed rank by rank, refusing to be defined by a zip code that tried to cage his future. He carried those childhood lessons into Kandahar and beyond, earning trust in rooms where doubt once welcomed him first. Some barriers cracked, others stood in stubborn, familiar ways. Weeks earlier, he'd led Operation Starfall, quietly extracting a high-value source from hostile ground. The after-action report read like a blueprint for judgment under pressure. Pentagon leaders noticed. Wallace already knew. That was why the alert hit with a personal jolt. You don't leave your people on the battlefield, foreign or domestic. Principles don't change with the skyline. Back in West Ridge, the first news van bumped over the curb, cameras swinging toward an unimaginable tableau. Federal helicopters, military police, a local officer in cuffs. The crowd buzzed like power lines after a storm. A story long whispered in hallways had poured into the open. The old rules of who gets believed shifted a few feet that afternoon. At the station, Ellison tried to regroup. "We need the narrative unified," he told a captain. "Body cam?" The answer stung. Black tape over the indicator. Dash cam. Intermittent. Dispatch logs. Already requested by federal counsel. He called the DA again, the confidence in his voice thinner now. The old protections suddenly felt like cardboard shields in a downpour. In the Pentagon, Lynn coordinated with federal magistrates, digital signatures flashing across tablets. Preservation orders hit inboxes for Westridge PD and neighboring jurisdictions. Rodriguez packaged the device's data, audio, video, timestamps, vitals, and mirrored it to multiple secure vaults. "Chain of custody locked," she reported. "Civilian videos are proliferating. We're scraping public posts for corroboration." Wallace stepped into a briefing room and faced a semicircle of senior staff. "This isn't just about one shooting," she said evenly. "It's about patterns colliding with accountability and the message we send to every soldier watching. We will be thorough, lawful, and undeniable." Heads nodded. Hearts beat faster. A path had been chosen. There would be no hedging. Reporters called West Ridge City Hall. Elected officials said they were monitoring. A council member, voice trembling, promised a special session. Meanwhile, citizens organized on group chats and message boards, sharing clips and stories. A predictable countercurrent swelled too. Anonymous accounts pushing combative suspect claims. Reality and spin began their familiar tug-of-war over a wounded man's body. In a quiet waiting area, Delgado sat with hands finely clean, knuckles pale around a foam cup. A veteran told him softly, "You did right, son." He stared at a point beyond the wall. Courage isn't fireworks. Sometimes it's a whisper that refuses to shut up. He'd broken the silence that kept bad stories alive. He'd pay a price. He didn't care. Back at the Mitchell house, Grandma Estelle watched the news, hand over her mouth. The reporter mispronounced Andre's rank. She corrected the television anyway. A neighbor came by with soup and a stubborn insistence to sit a while. They watched shaky footage of helicopters landing on their street. "He told the truth," Estelle said. "He always has." The room held its breath. Ambulance telemetry pinged the hospital's intake monitors. "Male, 39, GSW right shoulder, stabilized," the paramedic said. "ETA 2 minutes." The team rolled to the bay. Captain Alvarez reviewed scans, mapping the path of a bullet that had refused to kill. "We'll fix what we can," she said, "and document everything else." Scalpel, suction, clamp. Work, the most honest prayer. In a dim corner of the ER, a young nurse paused, recognizing the name. Her brother had served under Mitchell overseas. "He wrote home for my brother when communications were down," she whispered. "Said he'd make sure Mom knew he was safe." She checked the monitor, exhaled, and kept moving. Hospitals are built on thousands of quiet acts of mercy. Ellison tried to ring old favors. Some went to voicemail. Others answered carefully, every sentence hedged with alleged and pending. He looked out his window at a town that had always felt manageable. You can't dam a river with your hands, not when the water's evidence and the current is people tired of swallowing their fear. Wallace's chopper slid onto a military pad near the hospital. She walked straight through security, trailed by Lynn and Ortiz. "We'll hold a joint presser," Wallace told her staff. "We lead with facts we can prove, timelines, recordings, biometric data, chain of custody, no conjecture." It wasn't theatrics, it was control through discipline, the language of credibility. In the neighborhood, Mrs. Patterson's phone vibrated nonstop. Reporters, relatives, strangers thanking her. She texted her granddaughter, who replied with a heart and a "proud of you, Nana." On her porch, she folded her hands, eyes on the street where she'd lived for 40 years. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it holds up a phone and refuses to look away. At the hospital, a social worker introduced herself to Estelle by phone. "We'll keep you updated," she promised. Estelle listened, steady now. "Tell my grandson I'm here," she said. "Tell him I remember the first time he saluted me after basic and said, 'Ma'am.' I said, 'Boy, your ears are still dirty.'" He laughed for a week. The social worker smiled. Detectives from a federal task force arrived at West Ridge PD to collect evidence. Some officers stiffened, some relaxed, relief hiding behind professionalism. The room's temperature changed. A sergeant pointed mutely at a locker room door. Inside, a storage box labeled "training aids" sat oddly heavy. Task force members cataloged it without commentary. Sunlight felt different afterward. Lynn reviewed dispatch recordings, pausing when Blackstone's voice pitched performative urgency. "He scripts for the mic," she murmured, "but the biometrics from the prototype show Major Mitchell was calm until the shove." Rodriguez overlaid timelines, the data locked together like teeth on a gear. Facts can be patient, but when they turn, the movement is unmistakable. A rumor bloomed that federal troops had invaded West Ridge. Wallace refused to get baited. "We're enforcing lawful federal authority to protect a soldier and preserve evidence," she told a reporter evenly. "We coordinated with appropriate agencies. We're not here to occupy. We're here to ensure the truth survives." The clip was replayed on every channel that night. In the recovery room, machines hummed like distant crickets. Andre slept, shoulders bandaged, a constellation of bruises blooming. Wallace stood at the glass and saw him as more than a case, a man who'd chosen service and been answered with a bullet on a quiet afternoon. Leadership means carrying the weight and insisting it counts for something. Delgado drafted his statement, each sentence careful and true. He pictured internal affairs interviews, icy stares in the locker room, the long memory of small-town politics. He also pictured a handcuffed man collapsing against a cruiser door because he had no hands to break his fall. The choice of who he wanted to be had never felt clearer. Ellison met with an attorney who told him what he didn't want to hear. "You should step back," she said. "Conflict of interest with your brother-in-law is glaring. Federal oversight is inevitable." He bristled. "We've handled our own for decades." She closed her pad gently. "Maybe that's the problem," she said. The room went quiet except for the clock. Major Lynn filed supplemental warrants covering encrypted systems and personal devices if used for official business. "Scope is tight, Judge," she said over secure video. "We're protecting constitutional rights even as we investigate violations." The judge, tired, cautious, impressed, signed. "Good process matters as much as good outcomes. It's how you make justice stand up in daylight." The first compilation videos hit the internet. Neighbor footage stitched with dispatch audio, the arrival of the helicopters, the stunned crowd. The narrative most people recognized didn't require narration, nor did it need fury. The images supplied their own indictment. Meanwhile, a quieter chorus began to sing. Policy, training, culture, words that hide responsibility unless someone drags them into the sun. Captain Alvarez checked on her patient again. "Nerve function looks good," she told the chart. "Rehab will be work, but he'll get there." She jotted a note about scar management, then paused to tuck a stray blanket corner. "You repair what you can, you witness what you can't. Sometimes both are the job, and sometimes that is enough for a night." Reporters clustered outside the hospital for an evening press conference. Wallace stepped up with Lynn and Alvarez flanking her. "Major Mitchell remains in stable condition after surgery," Wallace began. "We have secured multiple sources of evidence, including live-streamed audio, video, and biometric data from a military device. We intend to share facts with appropriate transparency. We respect local institutions," Wallace added, "and we also respect federal law and the rights of our service members. Those values are not in conflict." Questions flew. She refused hypotheticals, offering only verifiable timelines and processes. The posture wasn't defensive, it was disciplined. In a noisy world, restraint can sound like authority if you've earned the right to speak. At home, Estelle turned off the television and sat in the quiet that follows adrenaline. The refrigerator motor clicked on. She whispered a prayer she'd said 1,000 times, half gratitude, half plea. Then she wrote a list for tomorrow. Call the pharmacist, find the good blanket, ask the pastor to come by. Love is a series of small tasks performed faithfully. In a break room, 2 West Ridge officers argued in low voices. He always pushed it, one said about Blackstone. Yeah, but you keep your head down, the other replied. That's how you end up complicit, the first answered. They fell silent when a detective walked in. Choices were rearranging themselves across town like furniture after a flood. Wallace's staff drafted a memo to the force. The uniform binds us to higher standards, it read. We fight for each other, but we answer to the truth. She added a handwritten line. No soldier should feel safer in Coast than at a pharmacy in Virginia. She didn't often editorialize. Tonight she made an exception. The words would circulate for years. Delgado drove home slowly, every light a thought. He parked and sat with the engine off, staring at his hands. He dialed his mother. You did the right thing, she said before he spoke. He didn't answer for a long moment. Finally, I know. Sometimes the right thing and the easy thing don't even share a zip code. He walked inside anyway. Ellison paced his office, television muted. A commentator speculated about civil rights exposure and federal charges. He thought about retirement, a beach, a boat. He thought about his brother-in-law in handcuffs. Accountability always sounds abstract until it knocks on your door carrying a ledger and a pen that only signs in ink. Mrs. Patterson watched the press conference replay and smiled sadly. Took long enough, she told the empty room. She placed her phone on the charger like setting down a candle after a vigil. She'd spent a lifetime teaching children to raise their hands. Tonight, she'd raised her own for the grown-ups who still needed the lesson. The hospital's night shift lights softened into a kind of quiet that isn't silence, just gentler work. Alvarez reviewed labs. Stable? She allowed herself one unclenched breath. Outside, a patrol car idled, and a soldier smoked under a sodium lamp. Worlds that usually orbit in different skies had come into alignment for a night, not by choice, but by necessity. Wallace stepped into the corridor outside Andre's room, viewing him through glass. She remembered a different hallway overseas, where he'd cracked a joke after an impossible day, breaking tension like he'd been born to carry other people's heaviness. Leaders often borrow that gift. Tonight, she promised him silently, we will not let this be rewritten. Lynn's team pushed late, mapping complaint patterns, matching dates, teasing out who signed what and when. A curator of the avoidable, a cartographer of accountability. The outlines of something larger started to show. Policy exceptions granted. Counseling substituted for discipline. Files moved, then moved again. Patterns aren't proof, but they tell you where to look harder. Rodriguez refreshed the evidence vaults. Backups were duplicated, and then duplicated again. If it exists, it persists, she said, almost to herself. She checked the device feed one more time, freezing on the moment before the shove. Andre's breathing was slow, shoulders relaxed, calm. The picture that tells the truth often looks unremarkable, right up until it matters. In the ICU waiting area, Estelle arrived with a church friend, cardigan buttoned against the hospital air. A nurse brought them tea. He's sleeping, the nurse said. He's stubborn, Estelle replied with a small smile. She folded her hands, the way she had when he left for basic training, when he shipped out, when the letters came. Waiting is an old discipline. A city council member visited the precinct and asked for a briefing. The answers were thin, the phrasing careful. We're evaluating, the captain said, which sounded like, we're overwhelmed? The council member, who'd once run on Back the Blue, stared at an evidence receipt stamped with federal seals and realized that slogans can't carry the weight of facts forever. Wallace returned to the hospital wing after midnight and stopped at a window overlooking the parking lot. Somewhere in the dark, a helicopter thudded toward another crisis. She thought about every soldier who had watched the clip and imagined themselves on that pavement. She thought about their families. She pressed her palm against the cold glass and went back to work. In West Ridge, porch lights burned late. Neighbors texted links and memories. Someone posted a photo of the cracked tail light with the caption, "This started it?" Another replied, "No, it started long before." Storytelling is a contested space. The difference tonight was that more people had receipts. The town's future began to wobble on its old hinges. Andre slept, then surfaced briefly. Pain dulled, voices distant. He heard a nurse humming off key and saw a ceiling tile shaped like a funny state. He tried to lift his right arm and failed. A hand, steady, warm, rested on his left. "You're safe," someone said. He believed it, not because of the words, but because of their weight. Captain Alvarez updated the chart one last time. "Sedation taper in the morning," she wrote. "Begin PT consult. Family visit if stable." She paused at the door and looked back. Surgeons don't often get to see lives beyond the scar. Tonight she imagined a parade formation, a medal ceremony, a grandmother's beaming face. It steadied her more than coffee. Wallace dictated a closing note. "We don't confuse speed with haste," she said. "We move quickly so the truth doesn't get trampled." Lynn added cross-references to case law, tightening the spine of the investigation. Ortiz logged custody of Blackstone's sidearm. Procedure can feel cold. It's also how you build something warm enough to keep people safe. In the half-dream between morphine and memory, Andre saw his father again, polish on boots, creases sharp, eyes gentle. "The uniform gives us a chance at respect," Leonard said, "not immunity." He remembered when promotion passed his father by, and how he smiled anyway, strength as quiet as a stitched seam, holding against strain others never noticed. After Leonard died, Andre and his mother learned how to live in a world that met them first with suspicion. When cancer took her, Grandma Estelle carried what was left of the family with stubborn grace and small jokes. The army gave Andre a ladder out and a banner to carry. Some barriers moved, others didn't. He kept climbing anyway. Yet Andre had learned to outpace bias, leading with cool judgment that saved lives. Elsewhere in the hospital, Estelle Mitchell arrived, escorted by military staff flown in from West Ridge. 80 now, arthritic but proud, she moved with quiet dignity toward her grandson's room, refusing the wheelchair twice before finally accepting an arm. General Vanessa Wallace met her in the corridor, extending a hand with genuine regard. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm General Wallace. Your grandson serves under my command. He's among our finest." Estelle's fingers wrapped the general's firmly. "Thank you for coming for him," she said, voice steady despite the storm beneath. "Folks in West Ridge been targeted for generations." "My late husband caught a baton in '66 for sitting at a lunch counter," she murmured. "My boy got hauled in for looking suspicious, walking home from the factory. Now my grandson." Her voice cracked at last, decades of grit giving way. Wallace guided her to a chair. "Mrs. Mitchell, I promise this won't be buried. We have evidence that cannot be twisted," Wallace continued, "and we have lawful authority to see it through." Estelle searched the general's face. "We've heard pretty words before, General," she said softly. "Seeing you here, seeing what you did today, maybe this time's different." She rose and took her seat by Andre's bed, vigil begun. Wallace rejoined Major Diane Lynn and the team inside a hastily secured conference room turned command hub. In 24 hours, the case had hardened. "The recording from Major Mitchell's device is unequivocal," Lynn reported, cueing the footage. "Officer Tyler Blackstone escalated instantly, dismissed military ID, searched illegally, then fired at a restrained, compliant subject. Intelligence analyst Lieutenant Mina Ko brought up subpoenaed documents. 5 years, 37 use-of-force events for Blackstone. 34 involved black residents, 15 formal complaints, all dismissed by Chief Martin Ellison without inquiry." Wallace's jaw set. "And Ellison?" Lynn's expression cooled. "More than kin. Their family by marriage, plus communications tying Ellison and DA Lila Montrose to coordinated protections, co-advanced another slide. Pattern widens. Judge Henry Ralston has tossed 23 excessive force cases in a decade, nearly all involving the same officers. He golfs with Ellison weekly and shares a private club membership with the Mayor Wallace exhaled through her nose. So not a bad apple. An orchard managed to rot on purpose. We're looking at a coordinated shield across police, prosecutor, bench, and city hall, Lynn said, designed to preserve discretion for certain officers, particularly against black residents. A junior aide slipped in. General, it's everywhere. Mrs. Patterson's clip just crossed 5 million views, networks leading with it. Protesters are outside West Ridge PD, now local response? Wallace asked. Mayor Ronald Whitaker, calling for calm and promising a thorough review, the aide said. Chief Ellison claims military overreach. He has requested the governor restore local control. Wallace's smile was thin. They still don't grasp jurisdiction or momentum. We'll stay within the law, and we won't blink. Dusk deepened when Andre fully surfaced. The first thing he focused on was Estelle's hand wrapped around his, strong despite tremor. Grandma, he rasped, throat raw from anesthesia. You're safe now, baby, she said, tears bright. The general came for you. They ain't letting this slide, Wallace slipped in, presence filling the room. Major Mitchell, she said, formal tone softened by concern. Welcome back. He tried to straighten, winced, settled. Extraction appreciated, ma'am. Not quite Kandahar, but I'll take it. A ghost of a smile touched Wallace's mouth. She'd greenlit Starfall herself. How do you feel? Like I've been shot, he said dryly. I've had worse? His gaze sharpened. What's next? Wallace pulled a chair close, decision already made. We've compiled overwhelming evidence against Blackstone, Ellison, and others. DOJ is ready to open a civil rights probe on our referral. You should know pursuing this makes you visible. Scrutiny, headlines, the weight of a bigger fight. Do you want to press forward? Andre looked to Estelle. Her eyes held generations of endurance. With respect, ma'am, he said, voice steadying. This isn't just about me. It's about every black driver pulled for nothing. Every kid hassled for walking home. Every family told an officer feared for his life. If this helps nudge the system, I'm in. Fully, Wallace nodded once. Conviction meeting conviction. I expected as much. Rest. You'll need your strength. As she left, her phone buzzed. The president requested a direct update. Wheels were turning, and so were the gears set to grind back. The battle would expand into courtrooms, news cycles, and rooms where power prefers dim lighting. Do you think Andre made the right call? Drop a 1 if you see a leader stepping up for systemic change, or 2 if recovery should come first. Tap like if his resolve hits you in the chest, and subscribe to follow the clash ahead. The Pentagon's involved, but can reform, beat an entrenched machine. Chief Ellison strode the length of Mayor Whitaker's office, fury and panic warring under his skin. This is unprecedented military overreach, he fumed. They detained my officer, seized records, and are threatening a takeover. Whitaker, silver-haired guardian of the status quo, nodded, as he did math only politicians learn. Votes, donors, cameras. Martin, I hear you, Whitaker said, correcting himself mid-sentence and revealing old habits. But that video's everywhere. 5 million and climbing. We need strategy. Ellison slammed the desk with an open palm. Strategy? If they dig, they'll raise what we built. The unsaid hung heavy. Both men understood exactly which foundations. I'll call Judge Ralston and D.A. Montrose, Whitaker said at last. We'll present a united front. Within an hour, the town's power block gathered. Ralston, indignant jowls in motion. Montrose, ambition lacquered in calm. We reclaim jurisdiction, Montrose said crisply. I'll argue the military overstepped. Judge Ralston can expedite. He nodded solemnly. Ellison's shoulders eased. And the evidence? He asked. That phone? The neighbor's video? Montrose's smile chilled. Improperly obtained evidence can be excluded. We'll argue the military device was unauthorized surveillance of an officer on duty. Whitaker raised a hand. Public perception matters. There's a crowd chanting right now. Distant noise filtered through glass. We've handled protests, Ellison said curtly. Riot control overtime's approved. This feels different, Whitaker replied. Federal helicopters change calculations, and he's no random citizen. He's a decorated major. While City Hall plotted, Wallace handled strategy of her own. In a secure hospital conference room, she briefed the Attorney General over video. Evidence is irrefutable, Wallace said, sharing footage and summaries. It's not a one-off. We're seeing a decade-spanning pattern. The Attorney General, herself a former civil rights litigator, listened, jaw tight. You have my full backing. Civil Rights Division opens immediately. A team lands tomorrow, Wallace nodded. Judge Ralston's moving on an injunction. Let him, the AG replied, calm edged with steel. Your authority's sound. Any obstruction of DOJ becomes its own count. Call over, Wallace turned to Lynn. They'll hit us in court and on cable news. Prepare for both, Lynn nodded. Legal team set for jurisdictional crossfire. Public narrative, there's something else, she hesitated. A leak. Wallace's eyes narrowed. Released or leaked? Leaked, Lynn confirmed. Details of Andre's classified work are appearing. Stuff never made public. Someone thinks elevating his heroism bolsters support across news sites. Andre in dress blues, ribbons, and stars gleaming, flashed beside outraged op-eds asking how a man who served could be treated like a suspect. Veterans from every stripe spoke out online and on air, furious and unified. In West Ridge, resistance turned meaner. Ellison summoned Officer Nate Delgado. You betrayed the department, he said, voice like a slammed door. Sided with feds. Delgado's hands shook, but his words didn't. I sided with the truth. What Tyler did was wrong, and not the first time. Ellison leaned in. Watch yourself. Officers who forget loyalty have accidents. The air chilled. Delgado left, rattled but resolute. That night, he called Major Lynn, offering testimony and a cache of notes he'd kept for years, dates, stops, violations buried by command. He wouldn't be the only one to find his voice. 2 officers visited Mrs. Eileen Patterson, suggesting she reconsider sharing her video. 73 spine straight, she called the local station instead. I've seen this injustice my entire life, she told a camera. I'm not shutting up. The attempt to muzzle her detonated online, drawing more witnesses with stories they'd once whispered only to friends. Fresh intel hit Wallace's desk. We've got credible indications Ellison ordered evidence destruction, Lynn said. Complaint files, past dash cam pulls, internal chatter about Andre's shooting. Wallace didn't blink. Loop, DOJ, seize it now. Within hours, federal agents arrived with warrants, catching a clerk mid-delete at a terminal. Chain of custody began with a screenshot. Ellison, watching sand pour through his fingers, dialed Senator Charles Barron, Law and Order Thunderbolt and Union favorite. Senator, the military's undermining local policing, he said. Morale's collapsing. Barron promised to press the defense secretary, political gears turning audibly over the phone. Meanwhile, Judge Ralston inked an emergency injunction as planned. Major Lynn accepted the papers with a dry smile. Exactly on cue, she said to Wallace. Response drafts were already open. The legal fight had begun in earnest, but the narrative tide was rolling the other way. Truth, once caged, was stretching. In Andre's room, strength crept back each day, stubborn as he was. Wallace kept him briefed. They're counterpunching hard, but they misread what's arrayed against them. Andre understood the math. They've operated untouched so long they can't imagine answering to anyone. That's why this matters. Wallace studied him, seeing again the strategic clarity that earned his command. The West Ridge fight was becoming a hinge moment. Despite the headwinds, Wallace felt momentum harden into probability. DOJ's team arrived with the quiet professionalism of people who've done this before. Led by Special Agent Carmen Velez, a 20-year veteran of civil rights cases, they set up in the federal building, deliberately separate from both military and local police, signaling independence from the start. Velez didn't waste a minute. Interviews were scheduled, subpoenas served, servers imaged before the unforeseen outages could arrive. "We have reason to believe complaints were systematically suppressed," she briefed. "We'll recover the paper trail and map the pattern." The paper trail obliged, as it often does when arrogance grows careless. What Andre and neighbors knew lived in the numbers. Traffic stop data showed black drivers 7 times likelier to be pulled than white drivers, 12 times likelier to be searched. Use of force cases skewed similarly. 84% black residents in a town, 17% black. Ellison had pushed informal quotas in specific neighborhoods, rewarding averages disguised as diligence. Delgado arrived with a thumb drive of 3 years' notes. 5 more officers, mostly younger, followed. "Procedure ignored, complaints buried," he told Velez. "It's not just Blackstone. The system expects it," Officer Irene Rodriguez added. "Cross the thin blue line, you get frozen out. Or worse." Velez initiated whistleblower protections. Fear only loosens when someone stands first. Ellison blundered. Under pressure, he tried purging sensitive threads. Unaware federal mirrors were already running. The deletion attempts were logged in real time, stacking obstruction counts onto a teetering pile. Judge Ralston, sensing the tide, announced a sudden recusal. To avoid appearance of conflict, cameras caught agents exiting his chambers with boxes. DA Montrose, ever nimble, pivoted. She called Velez, promising cooperation, then went on record. "My office is committed to accountability." The calculation was transparent. Better to step toward the right side of history than be swept aside by its undertow. The governor, late to the party, announced a statewide commission on policing with West Ridge as the pilot. "The integrity of justice requires equal application," he intoned, staking a careful claim on reform. In the hospital, Andre attacked physical therapy with the same discipline that had carried him overseas. The wound healed, the ache stayed. Each session moved him closer to a courtroom he both dreaded and needed to face. Wallace stopped by often. "Your grandmother's become a voice," she told him. "Her interview about 3 generations of West Ridge policing is everywhere." Andre wasn't surprised. Estelle had never been shy around injustice. "She's earned the mic," he said. "She watched the promises and lived the reality." Wallace nodded. "People are stepping forward after hearing her." The FBI lab enhanced Mrs. Patterson's footage, frame by frame. The new cut showed Andre handcuffed and still when the muzzle flash burst. Blackstone's threatening movement evaporated in pixels. With the evidence irrefutable, DA Montrose approached defense with a deal. 20 years on attempted murder and civil rights counts, parole considered after 15. To nearly everyone's shock, Blackstone refused. "He maintains he did nothing wrong," his lawyer told Montrose. Privately, counsel had urged acceptance. Years of impunity had taught the officer invincibility. It would be an expensive lesson. Andre trained harder, aiming to stand upright in court when the man who shot him finally faced consequence. The night before the preliminary hearing, Andre sat in Estelle's hotel room, the weight of tomorrow quiet between them. "Didn't think I'd see this day," she whispered. "All those years, they were untouchable." Andre held her hand. "This time is different. We have receipts, witnesses, and leaders willing to move." She squeezed back. "Because they couldn't ignore you." "What about the ones without a general's cell number?" she asked, slicing to the heart. Andre's resolve set. "Then this can't stop with me," he said. "It has to fix what made this possible." Morning brought dress blues and a sling. He walked the corridor past cameras, metals catching light like arguments you can't talk away. In shackles, Blackstone was led the other direction. Their eyes met, his still defiant, Andre's steady as a man, whose faced worse and outlasted it. Outside crowds gathered, some with signs, some simply to witness the hinge. National media turned a local wound into a mirror many had avoided for years. The reckoning widened. Inside, Andre sat with the prosecution team, DOJ alongside JAG. Across the aisle, Chief Ellison, Judge Ralston, and others under investigation took seats in the gallery, watching a stage they might soon occupy as defendants. Over 7 days, the case unfolded with method and patience, brick after brick mortared by receipts. The phone's recording carried everything: the instant hostility, the racial barbs, the false radio performance, the shot into a cuffed man. Mrs. Patterson's enhanced angle corroborated each beat. On day 3, Andre testified, voice level, words exact. I complied with every instruction, he said. My training is to remain calm under pressure. I did. The defense leaned on the familiar script: split-second decisions, perceived threat, an officer's fear. It crumpled under Major Lynn's cross. Officer Blackston, she began, tone cool, you testified you feared for your safety when Major Mitchell turned, correct? Yes, he said. Sudden movement. Lynn played the footage. Point to the threatening move, she said. Silence lingered. Camera doesn't show everything, he muttered. Lynn produced service logs. Certified, fully functional 3 days prior, you reported 6 malfunctions in incidents with black residents this year alone. Coincidence? She introduced text messages, slurred with bias, recovered from his phone. Faces in the gallery hardened. Former complainants described stops that spiraled for no reason beyond skin. Patterns formed a shape jurors couldn't ignore. Deliberations took 4 hours. On attempted murder in the first degree, the foreperson read, we find the defendant, Tyler Blackstone, guilty. Then came the rest. Civil rights violations, false reports, guilty, guilty, guilty. Color drained from his face. 2 weeks later, visiting Judge Marisol Torres delivered sentence. The badge is a public trust, she said, gaze fixed. You wielded it as a cudgel. 25 years in federal custody, no parole before 20. The trial was a start, not an end. DOJ widened its aperture to encompass the structure that enabled everything. Charges followed quickly: obstruction, evidence tampering, conspiracy to violate rights for Ellison, a judicial conduct probe for Ralston, benched pending outcome. The governor's commission recommended overdue basics, mandatory body cameras, empowered civilian review, bias recognition, genuine de-escalation. Policy doesn't change hearts, but it can change what's possible and what isn't. Andre's personal vindication arrived alongside promotion. Wallace offered a new post, a Pentagon task force bridging military accountability culture and civilian reform realities. You speak both languages, she said. We need that. He accepted with a clear mission. Within 6 months, the Mitchell Foundation for Police Accountability launched to fund legal fights most couldn't afford. The prototype phone that saved him inspired a simplified accountability kit. Partnering with technologists and civil rights groups, Andre helped deliver secure capture tools to communities at risk, evidence that could outlast memory and overwhelm spin. If power rewrites first drafts, truth needs better pens. The pilot programs spread faster than expected. Nearly a year later, on a warm spring afternoon, Andre visited Estelle in her new place. Safer neighborhood, better light, bills handled. You moved mountains, like, she told him, holding clippings about reforms nationwide, citing the West Ridge case. Not just for you, for everybody, he smiled, realistic as always. It's a beginning. Work remains. Driving back to base, he spotted a cruiser with a flat on the shoulder. He pulled over without thinking. The young white officer stiffened at first, hand drifting toward his holster. Training and culture in reflex. Recognition dawned. Major Mitchell, he asked, lowering his hand. I've followed your case. Andre grinned. Need a hand with that tire? They worked side by side, conversation turning gently. Your story made me check my blind spots, the officer admitted. There's stuff we've been taught to accept. Unlearning's a skill too, Andre said, tightening a lug. Change had a shape that day. 2 people on a shoulder, building something practical with their hands. Back at the Pentagon, Andre briefed commanders, and by invitation, civilian departments. The scars under his uniform and the steadiness in his voice became arguments harder to dismiss. The system had failed him, and many before him. but its gears were grinding differently now. Not perfectly, not everywhere. Enough to hear the difference. What unlocks real change in policing? Drop your thoughts. Policy, training, oversight. What else? Has this reshaped your view of accountability? If standing up to power matters to you, hit like, subscribe, and pass this on. Stories don't fix systems, but they can light the path and shove the first door. Thank you for walking this road from shadow to daylight. Institutions change slowly, then suddenly, when courage and evidence converge. Andre Mitchell's journey shows that even uniforms stacked with medals don't always protect Black Americans from profiling, but proof and pressure can bend the arc. The military response previewed what accountability looks like without excuses. One case isn't a cure, it is a blueprint. Rot hides in departments, courts, and councils that protect their own. Repair means changing incentives, rules, and the people who apply them. It also means insiders like Delgado telling the truth, and outsiders like Wallace stepping in when local trust is spent. Both are necessary. The Mitchell Foundation keeps extending the win, resources for those without rank, voice, or access. Justice isn't just punishment, it's prevention. Build systems where abuse has nowhere to breathe, and stories like West Ridge become history lessons, not headlines. What have you witnessed, and how did you respond? Your voice might be the next hinge. If this moved you, and you believe accountability should be more than a slogan, share this with someone who still thinks the old way works. The badge should mean safety, not fear. The robe should mean fairness, not favor. The oath should mean everyone, not some. That's the work. That's the promise. Estelle folded the last clipping and tucked it into a drawer beside a faded photo. Leonard in dress blues, Andre at 10, holding a paper flag. We keep going, she whispered, closing it gently. In the hallway, sun pooled on the floor like a quiet blessing. The house hummed. The world kept turning. Meanwhile, in West Ridge, new leadership took the oath in council chambers packed to the rafters. A civilian review board with teeth seated its first members, teachers, veterans, nurses, a pastor, a mechanic. They didn't look like a club. They looked like a town. Rules had changed. So had who got to write them. A rookie asked his training officer, "Oh, what's actually different?" The answer surprised him. Now, if you turn off your camera, you don't finish the shift. Incentives are policy translated into heartbeat. Accountability had started to feel less like a threat and more like an expectation. Culture lagged. Culture also learns. Nationally, departments borrowed the toolkit: body cams by default, early warning systems for bias patterns, independent review on serious force, data made public by design. Some chafed, others exhaled. The goal wasn't to make the job harder, it was to make it honest. Good cops said the quiet thing aloud. Standards protect us too. In a lecture hall, Andre told cadets, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to do the next right thing anyway. Someone asked about Blackstone. He believed the rules wouldn't touch him, Andre said. He was wrong. Let's build a world where believing that isn't tempting, because accountability is normal. At home that evening, Andre set down his phone and let the quiet sit. The day's briefings had gone long. The inbox would wait. He stood at the window, city lights blinking like patient beacons. Tomorrow would ask more. He would say yes again, not because he wanted to, but because he could. Estelle called. "You eating?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," he lied. She paused. "Left you stew on the second shelf." He laughed, opened the fridge, and found it right where she said. In every battle, logistics wins. He warmed the bowl, took the first spoonful, and felt the ache in his shoulder ease a notch. In another office across town, DA Montrose signed a new policy: public release timelines for body cam footage after major force incidents. Critics snarled. Activists said, "Finally." She ignored both and focused on implementation. Reputation follows behavior, not tweets. The memo went out before midnight. The next morning, the phones rang less angrily. Mayor Whitaker held a press conference nobody envied. He announced Ellison's suspension pending trial. and recommended external candidates for chief. "We got it wrong," he said, voice carrying the weight of not saying it sooner. Voters hear apologies differently when backed by action. A protester lowered her sign a few inches, listening. Andre visited West Ridge quietly. No cameras, just a drive down memory's rough streets. He parked near the pharmacy and stood where he'd bled. The asphalt looked ordinary, chewing gum specks, oil phantom. He breathed once, twice, and let the past be past enough to stand on without sinking. Then he turned and kept walking. A kid on a bike recognized him. "You the guy from the helicopters?" he asked. Andre grinned. "I was the guy under them." The kid considered this, then nodded like that was cooler. "My aunt says they don't mess with the neighborhood as much now." "Your aunt sounds smart," Andre said. The kid pedaled off, back tire squeaking. At the hospital, Dr. Elena Alvarez taught residents using Andre's case, not for spectacle, but for systems lessons, trauma protocols, evidence integrity, chain of custody in medical contexts. "We patch bodies," she said. "We also safeguard truth." A resident scribbled, thinking of future nights when both duties might collide in one thin corridor. In class, a civics teacher streamed the press conference where Judge Torres delivered sentence. Students debated authority, bias, reform, and what equal justice should mean after West Ridge. A quiet sophomore raised her hand and said, "We have to change rules and hearts, but rules first so hearts have time to learn." The room stilled, then nodded. The Pentagon Task Force published its first report, Recommendations for Interoperable Evidence Standards when Military Personnel Interact with Civilian Law Enforcement, so no one improvises the next crisis. Wallace signed the foreword. "Accountability is not adversarial to public safety," she wrote. "It is its foundation." She slid a copy across to Andre. "Good work." Estelle planted marigolds along her porch, knees protesting, determination louder. Neighbors waved. She waved back, sun on her face, history at her back, future stubbornly invited. She had outlasted baton swings, patrol lights, courthouse shrugs, and campaign smiles that meant nothing. Today she watered flowers and let herself believe tomorrow might actually bloom. Delgado testified again, this time before the commission. "I was scared," he admitted, "and I did it anyway." The room exhaled. He detailed quotas, winks, and the way sarcasm greases cruelty. He also told them about the first call he handled after reforms, a de-escalation that ended with a handshake. No report, no bruise. Different felt good. Mrs. Patterson received a community service award she didn't ask for. "I just pressed record," she said into a mic. "You did the rest." But everyone knew better. Courage has 100 forms. Hers looked like a phone held steady by hands that had steadied many before. She placed the plaque on her mantle and made tea. Elsewhere, Senator Barron held a hearing heavy on theater, light on substance. The defense secretary answered cleanly. Jurisdiction was clear, evidence preservation lawful, cooperation with DOJ airtight. Sound bites flew, facts stood. The clips went online, where attention spans are short but allergic to obvious spin. The narrative kept its footing. A recruit class at West Ridge PD ran scenarios with new scripts. Instructors emphasized articulation, proportionality, and the simple discipline of listening. Old-timers rolled eyes, then found that calls ended faster when people felt heard. A rookie wrote in her notebook, "Respect saves time." She underlined it twice and didn't feel naive. Andre jogged carefully, shoulders still tight in the morning cool. He passed a memorial for a teenager he'd never known, lost years earlier to a different badge, a different town. He paused, touched the weathered photo, and kept moving. Healing isn't a straight line. It zigs around markers, then finds open road again. The DOJ team wrapped Phase 1 in West Ridge. Velez briefed the press with her practiced restraint, recommendations, referrals, and a promise to keep coming back. Reporters peppered questions. She offered facts and timelines. Somewhere, a commentator sneered about feds with clipboards. Somewhere else, a mother exhaled. Clipboards can be bridges if you build right. Back at HQ, Wallace pinned a small, quiet commendation on Andre's uniform. No cameras, just a room, a breath, and a rare smile. "You carried more than your share," she said, "and you carried it well." He nodded, uncharacteristically speechless. Some victories don't need trumpets. They need a moment that doesn't vanish. Estelle hosted Sunday dinner. Delgado brought rolls. Alvarez brought guacamole that surprised everyone. Stories meandered. Laughter found its old path, and for a few hours the world shrank to plates, forks, and the comfort of people who showed up when it mattered. After dishes, Estelle pressed leftovers on them, like a general issuing rations. The Foundation's first grant-funded counsel for a teenager facing trumped-up charges after mouthing off at a stop. The attorney found body cam gaps, a familiar pattern. Case dismissed. The boy's mother cried in a hallway that had hosted too many bad days. Small wins stack into something big if you keep stacking. A podcast interviewed Andre about leadership. "What changed you most?" the host asked. "Seeing how quickly lies travel without friction," he said. "We answer with receipts and patience." "And what surprised you?" "How many people were waiting to help once someone said the first brave thing out loud?" Downloads spiked. So did volunteer signups. A letter arrived from a retired officer who'd left West Ridge years ago. "We tried to push back," it read. "We needed cover we didn't have. Thank you for giving today's kids that cover." Andre folded it carefully and slid it into a drawer beside his deployment patches. Not all ghosts are unwelcome. In a community forum, a minister asked, "How do we measure progress?" Andre answered, "Not by headlines. By fewer funerals, fewer bruises, fewer kids taught to put their hands on the dash before they learn multiplication." The room hummed with a low amen that didn't need a choir to sound like truth. A young activist challenged him. "Reform isn't abolition," she said. "What if reform can't catch up?" He listened, nodded, and didn't argue. "We're pulling every lever we can reach," he said. "If we build alternatives that work, I'm not precious about whose idea gets us to safety. I'm precious about outcomes." A yearbook photo resurfaced of Blackstone in Academy Grays, grinning, arms slung over classmates, comment sections filled with shock and posturing. Andre scrolled past. "Monsters rarely look like monsters in portraits. That's why systems matter. They catch what screens and smiles don't." He closed the tab and opened his task list. A briefing at the Hill went long. Staffers asked hard questions. Andre answered with hard data and the easier truth that followed. "If you can't measure it, you can't fix it," he said. "So we measure." A policy aide from a skeptical office stopped him afterward. "Thanks," she said. "We needed someone who speaks outcomes." On a training range, Andre demonstrated de-escalation scripting with MPS. "Voice is a tool," he said. "Use it before you use anything else." A young sergeant tested lines, surprised at how simple adjustments lowered temperature. "That felt better," he said. "It looked better," Andre replied. "And better on camera is better in court, too." He returned late to an empty apartment that didn't feel lonely so much as paused. He heated Estelle's stew again and ate, leaning on the counter, email pinging in harmless bursts he ignored. He washed the bowl, set it upside down to dry, and stood there, grateful for quiet that didn't demand an excuse. Outside, sirens slipped past, not for him, not this time. He thought of all the times they had been. Gratitude and anger live in the same house sometimes. You learn which room to sleep in. He chose gratitude, then wrote 2 more grant approvals before finally letting the day set. Equal justice under law, letters carved on stone, ideals printed on pocket cards, promises stitched into uniforms. West Ridge taught him how easily they warp. The last year taught him how stubbornly they can bend back. He didn't pretend the work was finished. He did believe it was finally moving in the right direction. What do you think? What should happen next? Not in stories, but in your city? Drop ideas that travel, policies, habits, expectations. Post what worked where you live. Somebody else might steal it, and that's the point. If this story changed something for you, share it. Let your voice be the next necessary ingredient. Thanks for staying with us from the first flashing lights to the last gavel. Stories don't fix the world. People do. But stories can rally the right people to the right work at the right time. If this helped, tap like, subscribe, and pass it along. The arc doesn't bend alone. The lesson wasn't that a uniform shields you. It was that a community, armed with facts and courage, can shield each other. Accountability isn't revenge, it's repair. And repair is what love looks like in public. If you've ever felt powerless watching injustice, remember, receipts plus resolve beats bluster eventually. Andre stood again at Estelle's porch. The marigolds, brighter than their size, made sense. You rest, she ordered. He saluted playfully. Yes, ma'am, she laughed, the sound of a long campaign ending one battle at a time. He headed down the steps back straight, future heavy and welcome on his shoulders. Somewhere, a dispatch cracked to life. Somewhere else, a rookie clipped on a camera and meant it. In West Ridge, the night came soft for once. Porch lights winked across streets that had seen hard things and might yet see better. The story wasn't over. It was finally pointed someplace worth going. Tomorrow's work waited: memos, meetings, budgets, briefings. None of it glamorous, all of it necessary. Andre's phone buzzed with a message from Delgado. Got coffee? He replied. Always. Systems don't change on headlines alone. They change on calendars. The day flipped. The arc bent another fraction. Thank you for witnessing Andre's road. May it pull us toward the country we claim out loud. If you're ready to help, start nearby. A meeting, a vote, a conversation, a camera turned on, a complaint taken seriously, a hand offered. Justice is ordinary work done persistently and then done again. Lesson 1, proof beats bluster. Why evidence saves lives. Many of you remember a time when a handshake sealed a deal and a note in a ledger settled disputes. Today, the ledger is digital, but the principle hasn't changed. If it isn't recorded, it can be rewritten by whoever shouts the loudest. Andre's prototype phone, quiet as a pocket Bible, captured what mattered: voices, video, vitals, GPS, that calm heart rate before the shove, the handcuffs already on, the muzzle flash, facts that stand up in daylight. For older Americans who sat through town meetings and watched stories bent by influence, this is a reminder and a comfort. Evidence isn't impolite, it's protection. It gave the Pentagon cause to act, the JAG team authority to preserve the scene, and the surgeons a timeline that matched the wound. Many of us have children and grandchildren who drive 5 miles to the pharmacy the way Andre did. Tell them to narrate their motions, keep phones charged, and know their rights. This isn't fear-mongering, it's simple preparedness, like buckling a seatbelt or keeping a flashlight by the bed. Power writes the first draft, proof writes the last. Lesson 2, courage needs a crowd. How community turns outrage into reform. Some of us have marched, some have prayed, and some have simply held a neighbor's hand when the news got hard. We know courage when we see it, but courage travels farther when community walks beside it. Officer Delgado spoke up. Mrs. Patterson held her phone steady. General Wallace brought lawful muscle and disciplined restraint. That chain, witness, whistleblower, and wise leadership turned a shooting into a turning point. Older readers understand this rhythm. After the sirens fade, real change lives in boring places. Policy memos, training calendars, budgets that match promises. In West Ridge, evidence didn't end at a verdict. It fed reforms, cameras that can't accidentally go dark, public stop data, promotions tied to respect, not raw numbers. If you've chaired a church committee or served on a school board, you already know the drill. Show up, ask for timelines, put dates on the wall and names beside tasks. Teach your grandkids how to record safely and how to file a complaint that won't get lost. Write your council member and then follow up in 30 days. When good officers see that accountability protects them too, culture shifts from fear to pride. Justice is not a thunderclap. It's a steady drum, kept by neighbors who refuse to lose the beat. Friends, you've seen how receipts and resolve carried Andre from a sidewalk to a courtroom and then into real reforms. In your town, what single change would make the biggest difference? Uneditable body cam rules, public stop data, a civilian review board with teeth, or training that rewards de-escalation? Have you witnessed a moment when a phone, a neighbor, or a quiet act of courage changed the outcome? Share your story below so others can learn and act. If this resonated, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you won't miss practical tools and true stories that help keep our communities safe and fair.